welcome. I'm very excited to be here today with Dr. Alicia Robbins. And Alicia and I have talked before, and the podcast didn't upload, so here we are again. But doing it in person is so much better than virtual, just like reading cues and seeing what we're saying. And if you're done talking or I'm done talking. So I'm really excited that I got this opportunity. Tell us just a little bit more about you and the Elm, what you've built in Connecticut, and where your passion for women's health started.
Yes. So I, like many OBGYNs, was doing a lot of obstetrics, delivering babies and seeing a lot of patients. And I was in a large group practice. And I started seeing this recurring pattern of women who were done having kids in their late 30s, early 40s, coming to their annuals or their visits and just saying, I just don't feel great. I'm so fatigued, or not sleeping well, or I'm having night sweats, or my period is all over the place. And I just don't feel great. And I didn't even have the answers to how to help them at that moment. But I thought, I really want to create a practice that is for for the mom or the woman who is not in her reproductive, actively pregnant. Because I think we focus so much on reproductive years and fertility, which is so important, of course. But I sort of, from the angle of an OBGYN, I was like, I feel like we just sort of leave women hanging after they're done having. We're like, come back for your PAP, see you in a year. And that's it. And we don't really give them a lot of guidance on how to prevent disease. And it's such an important decade, 40s and 50s for women, because this is a time when you can still have so much influence over your long-term health and prevention. And so many of the things that women are vulnerable to, like cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, and dementia and Alzheimer's, really are so highly influenced by your lifestyle. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to kind of create the type of practice that I would want to go to, where we have a little bit more time to address lifestyle. And I'm just going to figure out, I wanted a separate practice for these women. And so that was and the reason it's called The Elm was because my vision, and we're working towards that, is to eventually have sort of a large longevity place where it's all about women in midlife, and whether it be hormone therapy or it's bone scans or, guiding them with weight management or whatever it is, I want it to be focused on them. And because it's such a perfect storm for women in their 40s where they can really not prioritize their health. It's right. All these things, kids need, a lot of women in their 40s have young kids, or their husbands more demanding careers. And so all these different pulls on women. And that's only compounded by the fact that a lot of OBGYNs are so focused on pregnancy that when they do actually make the time to go see their doctor, that already is a big obstacle, right? To make because you're just constantly at pediatrician visits, or, your work or your job or whatever. So when you actually do find the time to go see your doctor, a lot of them really don't have great solutions for how to feel better, going forward, other than a birth control pill, which is not, in my opinion, the best solution for women in their 40s, depending on the situation. But anyway, so I really wanted to be very specialized in taking care of women 40 and above, essentially.
Which is this really intense time in our life, because I just turned 48. I think my 40s are the best decade so far. And I'm actually really looking forward to my 50s because I think also the world sees, or at least in our bubble, we see 40s for women as so different than it was like when my mom was even 40, and the generation above us. I can't imagine what it'll be like for the next generation, where I think in our 40s now, women are feeling more confident than ever, are doing more things than ever. If you have kids, they're at an age often where you can start to get more into the world and life than you ever were when you had little kids. If you don't have kids, I feel like women are found their voice and their actual passion and desire and are following it, where I don't think that used to happen for women in their 40s. It's just like, it's like such a silly thing, like, your 40s are your new 30s. No, I think our 40s are our 40s, and we're just sort of now understanding what it means to feel like we sort of have it together. But at the same time, our bodies are going through this unbelievable change that is so slow. It's like molasses dripping from the ceiling that you want to perimenopause is this insane time in our lives that lasts forever and has all these different stages and bumps and twists and turns that why I think a lot of women in our 40s, especially our later 40s, are feeling like strong and confident and excited, are also like, what in the actual hell is happening in my body right now? And when is it going to stop? And when it stops, does that mean I'm in menopause? And what the hell does that mean?
Right.
And literally, as you said, so few doctors not only have an answer, because I don't expect you to have like the magic bullet answer, but have an answer or have a discussion that is like outside of just to take the pill again, which my gynecologist who I love told me to a few years ago. I don't have fallopian tubes. I can't get pregnant. She's like, we'll put you back on the pill. It'll regulate your hormones. I mean, it felt horrible.
Yeah.
And, or we'll get your hormones tested. It's like more than that, right?
Yeah, so much more
deeper
than that.
and wider. How have you researched? How have you found not answers, but like more discussions around that topic?
Well, first, I was able to connect with an amazing group of women who sort of specialize in this. And so Dr. Corinne Men, who you should totally have on the podcast, she's great. And I started going to conferences. I went to the Menopause Society. I started meeting people who were doing this. And then I started like reading a lot more. I mean, academic papers, honestly, just scientific papers. I was reading one yesterday on the plane and learning about the important roles of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, not just in terms of regulating our periods, but our brain. I mean, that's what's so fascinating. The fact that I made it through medical school, residency, and I had actually good menopause training. We did have menopause training, which is more than a lot of programs, shockingly and disappointingly enough. But I didn't even realize how important progesterone and estrogen were for the woman's brain in terms of sleep and mood and how they regulate sleep and mood. And so once I understood that, it makes sense, like why women were coming saying, I'm not sleeping very well. And there wasn't like any other major changes, but it's really easy to dismiss because what happens is you're like, oh, well, you have kids, maybe it's the kids. And lab testing is not that helpful because women, especially if they're still having periods, will have normal progesterone and estrogen on paper. But that's because it's sort of a snapshot in time. It doesn't give a glimpse to the whole picture. And so, maybe compared to 3 years ago, a woman in her mid-40s, her peak estrogen, she still has enough estrogen to create a period. But compared to 3 years ago, her peak estrogen is much less than what it was years ago. And so her brain senses that. So I started realizing that you could use hormone therapy, and it's a little bit more nuanced in perimenopause than menopause. Hormone therapy doesn't, provide birth control. So that's why a lot of doctors are like, well, just do birth control. But it sort of made sense to me that if this is a process because of aging ovaries, right? Your ovaries basically the aging process of them starts to accelerate in your 40s. They are the primary source of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. So as that process, and it's different for every woman, but as that process starts in your 40s, why can't we sort of supplement with hormone therapy to help their quality of life and their symptoms? And it turns out you can. You don't have to wait till someone's fully menopausal, which has traditionally always been how we've done things, right? You 1 year without a period, and then we maybe give you hormone therapy if you really, really need it and, have to jump through hoops to get it. Now we're realizing that you can intervene earlier and it can work really well. If the cause really is from hormonal deficiencies, then it can be really helpful for sleep and mood. And like, what's more important than sleep and mood?
Which are both totally intertwined.
So intertwined. When I have a woman come to me and say gives me 6 different things, even weight loss, weight gain in that menopausal time can be a huge one. But if they're not sleeping, they're not going to be able to lose weight. So the first thing I want to do is get their sleep better. And it takes time. This is a process. There's not, a quick fix. But if it is from decreasing progesterone and estrogen, usually within a couple of weeks, they'll notice improvement. But I think the important message for women to know is there's a biological process that's happening that explains your symptoms. It's not in your head. You're not crazy. We can explain that. Just recognizing that alone can be a little bit reassuring, right?
Yeah.
Because I have women that are like, I'm not sleeping. I love my husband. I have no libido. I hate sex. I have no energy. And I'm irritable and ragey all the time. Am I do you think I'm crazy? And I'm like, you're not crazy. You're so not crazy. This is hormonal stuff that we can potentially help you with.
And I think also women get afraid to, one, just come to the conclusion or admit that, okay, your progesterone and your estrogen levels are not the same. There's something that's I don't know if it's triggering or something about that. But then also well, should I take that? Is that something I'm supposed to have now if my body doesn't producing it. You know, I think there's this like real skepticism in that whole genre.
There's this part of it is that I think there's still a stigma with aging. Recognizing it means you're getting older, right? Yeah. Recognizing it means that my ovaries are aging. And so, yes, I have definitely patients that are like, am I too young for this? Should I be doing this now? And so there's that. There's sort of this aging stigma. And I think the word perimenopause itself can kind of scare women because especially like someone who's 39 or 40 is like, why am I thinking about menopause right now? And I'll explain to them, it doesn't mean you're going into menopause sooner, but it's not like the night, the average age of menopause is 51. It's not like the night before your 51st birthday, all of a sudden now you're in menopause. This process starts years before, and these symptoms can be very insidious and slow. Like you said, like the molasses type of thing. Like these symptoms can also be caused by different things that can overlap. So you have to really tease it out. And the issue with the labs is that because, if someone goes to a doctor who's not really specialized in this, they'll say, okay, we'll send your hormones, we'll send estrogen, progesterone, FSH, LH, and it's all going to be normal when they come back. And so then they're like, well, your labs are normal, maybe just try to do some more meditation or work out more. And that's not that helpful. Like we can't intervene. I'm actually working.
That's when you start to think you're crazy.
Right. And then you start to think you're crazy. Yeah. I'm working with a company now called Ellie Health, which is a cool company that is developed technology to be able to do at home saliva testing, at least for cortisol for now, just because we know how much cortisol and stress impact health, but eventually with the plan to do it for sex hormones. And this is controversial because we kind of know that hormones fluctuate in perimenopause a lot. And so the argument in my traditional group of physicians is, well, how is that useful? Because we already know that they're all over the place. It's just going to confirm what we already know. But I would argue that we just we don't have enough testing to keep up with this. And if we were able to collect all this data, maybe patterns would emerge that would show us ways to better tailor hormone therapy or even things like PMS and PMDD for younger girls. Like maybe I think potentially there's a lot to learn from being able to have daily hormonal results and then be able to basically pull it all into data and a graph and compare from month to month what your hormones are doing. Maybe they're going in a certain trend. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening that will hopefully, make it clear for patients to understand their own health and then and sort of advocate for themselves.
And who are the drivers of these changes happening? Like, is it the physicians like yourself and the doctors, or is it because of like patient advocacy?
It's patients.
It's patients.
It's women. It's women who are going to change this because there's not enough physicians. I was talking about this right now with my cousin. Like, I'm always thinking about this. Like, how do we, because there's only, I'm hiring some people and I'm trying to develop like a telehealth practice to be more accessible, but there's only so many. Like, how do we change medicine? Medicine moves at such a snail pace. And I really think it's women, it's conversations like these. It's women that are going to be asking questions to their doctors, wanting different options, wanting to understand what's going on better. And that is going to force other providers in the healthcare system to address it instead of just historically dismissing these women as we have in the past. So I think the more we discuss it, the more we normalize. I mean, I'm very open about what I do, what I've struggled with, because I want women my age to understand that aging is a gift and we have to be okay and comfortable with that, because then we can sort of advocate for ourselves. Because if we're in denial about it, we're not going to like address it face on. Yeah. But I think it's these conversations. It's women. Women have all this, like, it's women patients.
And how has the reception been in your area, in your community to the Elm?
The Elm has been great. Yeah, we're so lucky. I love my community. I'm so fortunate. I just consider myself the luckiest person to be able to do this. I'm so passionate about it. We currently have a wait list right now because I can't take on anymore, but we are hiring an awesome nurse practitioner, another nurse who's training to be a nurse practitioner. So we have plans to make it more accessible and have more providers. And I hope to keep doing that even for other states. The great thing about perimenopause is that so much of this can be done over telehealth. And so, there's some great platforms that, MIDI Health, My Alloy, Electro Health. I have no relationships with them, but I want women to know they exist because they have great webinars and they have, they're reliable sources for perimenopause and menopause but I hope to do something similar, especially a little bit towards like a younger demographic, sort of the like early mid 40s.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of women that age don't necessarily identify with the like menopausal telehealth sort of practices. So I'm trying to sort of normalize, make it cool that we talk about these things.
Yeah. And do you still deliver babies?
No. You really can't. I mean, in my opinion, obstetrics and gynecology should be totally two different specialties.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, it makes no sense.
Why is it one? It's kind of interesting,
It used
right?
to be separated, and then they merged it. I don't know why. And there's a lot of us who think it should be separated because there's such different, and because OB understandably takes up so much. You know, in doctor's defense, we don't get good training in women's health, certainly not after. If we learn anything in women's health, it's all about pregnancy and fertility.
Yeah.
And then
it just like falls off.
Yeah. And then that's it. And then these doctors, you know, in the current healthcare system have to see 30 to 35 patients a day. They're dealing with pregnancy and which has a lot of acute issues in it, delivering. I mean, that it's mentally and physically a very hands-on and like mentally not draining, it's rewarding too, but it just takes a lot of bandwidth. So it's taxing in both the greatest and stressful and also very stressful ways. And so, you know, though doctors, it's hard to expect doctors doing deliveries and seeing 35 patients a day and doing 24 to 36 hour shifts to also be able to be specialist in perimenopause and hormone, because there's a lot of other things that it's, you know, that you have to address.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is what I think would be like in the best of all worlds is when you're as a woman who wants to have kids or is having kids, if you're in your 20s, knowing that like, it's hard for women that age to like think about 30 years from now. I get that for sure. And it's sort of like, I don't even want to think about that. And that's like, you know, Stone Age when I'm like a dinosaur. But there's something that would be interesting for women to one, know that like the same doctor is going to carry you all the way through, even though I believe that's impossible because I don't believe an OB is going to be the same gynecologist in your 50s, nor as you said, should they be, because their specialties are so different. So that doctor's delivering your babies isn't going to be able to have the even time or energy to dive into the expertise needed to do what you're doing, which is really understand perimenopause and menopause. But at least if women in their 20s or when they start seeing a gynecologist, hopefully in their late teens, that they know that there's like something ahead and that they have to keep seeing the right person to understand their body, to stay healthy, to, you know, really figure out how to be their best selves through this and thrive through this period.
Yes.
And that doesn't exist.
Yes.
Like somehow you don't, like it's so...
Well, I think because it hasn't really...
chasmed or something.
Yeah, because I think we haven't talked enough about changes that happen at this age. But now we are.
Yeah.
So I think it's changing. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question. I'm going to make it really personal.
Yeah, no problem. I love
because I told you
questions.
My gynecologist who I love retired.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a new doctor and I haven't seen her yet. Anyways. So I'm 48. I've definitely been experiencing perimenopause symptoms for a very long time now, years, where, you know, what you've been alluding to. You're just wide awake at 4 a.m. and you're like, why the hell am I wide awake? And then you fall asleep and you feel like crap when you wake up because you have that weird like, I fell back asleep, sleep. Yeah, definitely moody in a way that like, I think, oh, I must be getting my period tomorrow because I just feel like I want to kill everybody.
Yep.
But then I don't.
Yeah.
And so that's fun.
Yeah.
But with that said, I would get my period every 4 weeks, pretty much on the nose, a couple days off sometimes. Heavier than I ever had in my entire life. Like I've never experienced anything like it.
Yep.
As one of my dear friends, it's like we're bleeding out every month. It's like, oh my God, when is this going to end? But this last month, I am now currently a week late than I should be. And I've never been over a week late. I'm not pregnant. I don't have fallopian tubes. Unless, you know, some weird jumpy thing happened in my body. And then last night I woke up in the morning, middle of the night, and I was drenched in sweat. But I was like, oh my God, it's been over a week, which is really stressful because I'm like, when am I just going to get my period in the middle? I'm wearing like white jeans today. I'm like, well, that was stupid. You know, I have no idea. Or is this mean like, I might not get my period for a few months. I don't even know.
And it's horrible. It's horrible. It's totally. It is from it's
like
changes.
I always have to have tampons in my purse. This is crazy.
Yeah. So this sounds classic perimenopause.
Right.
And like the periods can stretch out. Sometimes you can go a couple months without them. Sometimes then they shorten and then they lengthen. Then you skip a few months. But this can be so irregular. And then when you get it, it's super, super heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I would say... You know, I mean, progesterone too would be really helpful for that. That can helpful. Progesterone can be helpful for lightening the period. It can be helpful for sleep. Estrogen can also be helpful for sleep. But this is very classic where we know that the first hormone that starts to decline is progesterone. And so that's one of the reasons why women get really, really heavy periods. They have these peaks of like high estrogen very compared to low progesterone. And so you get, progesterone opposes the estrogen from creating that lining in the uterus. So when you have a lot high estrogen relative to progesterone or low amounts of progesterone, you tend to build up a thicker lining in the uterus. You have heavier periods. Your sleep starts getting interrupted. But the good news is we can work on this. There's interventions for this. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll just be a telehealth together.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah.
Find a doctor. And then before you were, let's say you prescribed me progesterone, would you test my hormones, or like you said, like, is it even that tiny snapshot? Is that going to show you anything?
It's probably not going to show much. I do send blood work because I like to make sure that there's not other stuff that's impacting sleep or mood, but thyroid, vitamin deficiencies. A lot of women as we age have a harder time absorbing B12 from diet. And if you're a vegetarian, even more so. So I look at B12 levels, and that can be involved in sleep and mood as well.
Okay, I have a question about B12.
Yeah.
So I like to do IV drips, not that often. Yeah. Honestly, usually when I'm traveling far, I get one before I travel. So that at least I know I'm getting on the airplane like really hydrated. And then if I'm flying like overseas. And then when I come back, a week or 2 weeks later, I usually get one just to like boost my hydration levels and all the vitamins. But I never get B vitamins because the few times I've had B12, I am up all night and I have the craziest sex dreams I've ever had. I told you this, that I've ever had in my life.
That's right.
And so I don't know what I would like. Is that normal? Like, what would I do? Would I?
Yeah. I mean, everyone's different. Some people, that is a thing. You can improve. So some women seek out B12 for that reason.
I could totally see that.
And different B vitamins do different things.
Okay.
It really just depends on how you feel. Like if you don't love that effect, then I would skip the B12 and then focus on B6.
I don't really sleep because I'm like, or maybe I do. And I'm just like, wildly
it's hard
thrashing around my bed.
Look, I believe sleep is so important. So if it's interfering with your sleep, then I would say definitely maybe avoid the B12, do the other Bs, B6, thiamine, those ones. And then but is it the B12 or is it like insomnia from lack of progesterone? It would be, but the easiest thing would just be to avoid that for a while, just because anything that prevents you from sleeping, I don't think is worth it.
I agree. So you would take a blood sample just to make sure nothing else is going on?
Yeah, usually I also like to send one sex hormone that is useful to send is total testosterone. Okay. So that does not fluctuate. That tends to just decline in its own way. And so generally just getting a baseline for that, because I'm a big fan of prescribing testosterone for women. It's a naturally occurring female hormone. It's important for energy, potentially mood, body composition, bone health. So I will send that. So there's a few labs I send, but generally like it's a clinical diagnosis. We can just hear from the story what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like you're in this stage that couldn't possibly be going on with anyone else, but all women are going through this.
I know. And the fact that now that I realize that so many women have been going through this, and I look back on my training and I'm like, that's what was going on. That's what was happening. We were sending these women to psych, literally, and neurology and like, we weren't even addressing the root cause of what was going on. I mean,
which is weird because it's definitely scientific.
Yes.
It's literally changes in your body composition. Yes. It's changes in your hormone levels.
I mean, your brain needs, so basically one of the reasons sleep gets impacted and mood get impacted in perimenopause is that estrogen's net effect in the brain is to increase serotonin. Serotonin is what when we take SSRIs, antidepressant, it increases overall your serotonin levels. Not only that, but melatonin, the hormone that helps with your circadian rhythm, is derived from serotonin, which again is derived from estrogen. Yeah. So if you're not having as much estrogen, you have less serotonin available, you have less melatonin available. Not only compounding that, progesterone is involved in this GABAergic pathway in your brain, which has an anti-anxiety effect to help you fall asleep. Okay. You have less progesterone, less GABA, so you're a little bit more anxious. You have a hard time falling asleep. And estrogen is really important for staying asleep. So then you're waking up for no reason at 3 or 4 a.m. And lifestyle things will help, right? So this is a time in our lives when like lifestyle becomes really important too. So, making sure you're getting enough nutrients, nutrient-rich diet, you're having a nighttime routine but sometimes it's not enough. Yeah. I mean, it helps. It's important because I think you don't have that cushion of the hormones that you did always like you did in your 20s. So like in your 20s, you could be super stressed, but if you went to bed, you would sleep and you'd be fine, right?
Yeah.
But now you don't have that much of a cushion. You have to kind of rely on other ways to help relax and wind down, especially if you're someone who doesn't want to take hormone therapy or you're not a candidate for hormone therapy.
Yeah.
So,
okay, I love it.
But the fact that that's involved in your brain, and a lot of women don't know this, and a lot of providers don't know this.
No.
Like, it's crazy. And I've had women be like, I feel so much more mentally resilient. Like, how are we not this? I mean, it's arguably should be first line perimenopause anxiety and depression. Our HRT should be first line before SSRIs, or at least both.
Yeah. Especially when you're expecting so much of women at this age.
Yes.
I mean, this is with what I said at the beginning, like your 40s, you feel like you're getting your confidence and all your kids are older, you have all these things.
Yes.
But the world has now said like, this is the time for women to be doing these things and being on top of their game and on top of the, working and all these things.
Yes.
But it's really difficult to do so when no one in the community is addressing these.
Right.
Yeah.
And we put so much emphasis on looking good, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. But you want to feel good inside just as well. What's the point of looking good on the outside if you don't feel good from the inside?
If you feel like crap, you don't usually look your best. But agreed. You can't like fix this without fixing this.
Yeah.
So an interesting thing is later this week, we're going to be doing another interview or chat, whatever you want to call it, in Sun Valley, Idaho, where the altitude, it's basically a mile high. So you're really high in the altitude, 5,840 feet, 5,840, I believe is the, So when I am in altitude, and this summer I thought I would just be like having a mellow summer in LA. I've traveled every single week, and a lot of it's been back and forth to altitude. And I sleep terribly in altitude. Like terribly. Sometimes the first night I'm out because I sometimes just get there so tired. And then it takes me a week to just not be like wide awake in the middle of the night or anything. And I wonder, and it's definitely worse as I've gotten older in this stage. So I wonder, like, what will have you thought about that? Like, what will you do? Or what would you say to someone who's
notices these changes with altitude?
Yeah. I'm moving to Denver. All about me.
Right. No, usually there is a period of adjustment as you get to like your lungs and sort of your like your oxygen binding capacity adjust to that.
Yeah.
So I think that you'll be fine once you adjust to it. But I do think
definitely it's taking longer and longer as I
longer
get older
and longer.
older.
Yeah, because we, again, like it's all connected, and sort of the way we metabolize things, whether it's alcohol or coffee, our liver doesn't metabolize things as efficiently. So you feel more lagged after drinking even 1 or 2 glasses of wine, or you feel just more fatigued from that stuff. And so again, that's why lifestyle ends up becoming really important, is just increasing circulation. That's always good. How do you increase, creating blood flow? Because blood flow pushes nutrients to each of your cells. And so increasing circulation, again, comes from sleep, actually helps brain circulation, exercise. It goes back to the basics, hydration. So staying super hydrated, lymphatic, massage potentially. But basically anything that stimulates blood flow is going to be helpful in feeling better, in removing toxins, in increasing oxygen capacity to your brain and to the rest of your body so that you don't feel that as much.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm at the point where I'd barely drink.
Yeah.
And I'm like the not fun friend.
I know.
But I won't sleep. Yeah. And then I really feel horrendous the next day. And I'm like, I just don't think it's worth it anymore. I'm not that fun when I'm drunk, so it's not that exciting.
I am. But the problem is I don't want to rob myself of the next day. And like
more than that when you get older. It's awful.
And it's like so basically what happens with alcohol is that your liver just doesn't metabolize as efficiently as you did when you were younger. And you get the byproducts of alcohol metabolites are toxic to your brain, but also they end up having a little bit of a stimulant effect. And so you wake up, sometimes you get heart palpitations, maybe more anxiety, and then you're not sleeping and you're awake, anxious, potentially sweating. It can definitely worsen night sweats. You're like, who wants this? This
isn't worth it.
It isn't worth it. And it sucks. But basically, as we get older, we just don't metabolize things and toxins as efficiently.
Yeah. They just sort of stick in there.
Yeah.
It's not great.
No.
But at least now we have people like you and women who are talking about it to understand it. Because I think there's such a I mean, we're lucky. There's women all over the world who like don't talk about this or aren't surrounded by people who are talking about it, or doctors who the ability to go see someone who's like really in the throes of this, thick in the weeds. But like, it was so much harder when you literally didn't understand any of it. And it just, like you said, seemed like you were going crazy.
I just don't feel like myself.
I just don't feel like myself. Or why am I so tired?
Yes.
Why do I just feel like so tired? I remember I used to say to my husband, I go to bed wide awake and I wake up exhausted. Like that's how I felt for so long.
Right,
and it's a terrible feeling. And it makes it so hard to do your job.
Oh,
all
it's impossible.
the jobs.
I don't know how women have been so successful in running companies and doing things and running households and raising kids all while feeling this way. I mean, it's I don't know. Women are such remarkable humans and creatures. Like, but because of that, like we shouldn't ask them of that. Like they should be feeling good. Like it's because of all that, it's paramount that they feel good and invest in their health. The way I see it in terms of when you were sort of describing like, what we were talking about in Sun Valley is like, you have to meet them where they're at. And I think first it's like getting the basics down. I mean, some women are not even getting basic, preventative care in terms of the most basic things. So we first have to make sure that is happening. And then I sort of, lifestyle and hormone therapy. And then you can layer on sort of the more like really cool cutting edge longevity stuff and peptides and toxins and detoxification protocols and anti-aging protocols. And I think that all that stuff is so cool. But I think we have to sometimes get the basics better first. Like I remember when I was delivering babies, I was go up for 36 hours, high stress, and I would get to the point where I was so wired, I couldn't even sleep when I'd get home. Yeah. And I would just be up for like 48 hours. I was almost like manic. Yeah. But yet I was like, and I couldn't lose weight, and I'm sipping my turmeric latte because I'm like, I'm needing turmeric because it's anti-inflammatory. And then I just remember having this moment where I was like, turmeric's not doing anything for me because I haven't slept in 2 nights, And so I think
that turmeric latte is really not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we have to sort of get the basics down first. And sometimes I forget that we haven't even assured that women in their 40s are getting the basics.
Yeah.
Like that they're sleeping okay, that they know what to eat, that they know what kind of exercise to do, that resistance training is just as important as cardio, if maybe not more as we get older, arguably, that certain nutrients are really that can be simple things like magnesium, glycinate, or vitamin D can go a long way in terms of their health. And then once all that is better, then we can start talking about
the nuances of it. Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much. We could go on forever, but I think we hit a lot. To me, the takeaways are that there are answers. Like there are true answers, and there's discussions to be had even before you get to those answers.
Yes. I really want women, because I don't want this to be a conversation of like, oh, sounds awful to get into perimenopause or menopause, because as Dr. Mary Claire Haver says, a colleague and someone who inspires me a lot, menopause is inevitable, but suffering is not. And we do know we have good treatments for this. Accessing those is a little bit trickier, but things are changing. We're working. There's a lot of companies coming forward to provide care to women. And that's something that I am trying to develop as well. And there's a lot more webinars and educational resources and social media accounts that are addressing this. So that's great. And that's honestly, I want women to feel empowered by these conversations so that they know this is a medical, scientific thing that's happening. It's not on my head, and there are treatments, both lifestyle and hormonal, that can potentially be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we'll keep getting into it. Thank you so much, Alicia. This was awesome.
Oh, I'm so glad. So great always to talk to you, Amy.
Thank you.